right, microphones are on, I think. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the February 1st, 2012 City Council meeting. This evening, the mayor is actually not going to be with us, and so we'll proceed. Starting off this evening, Mr. Marco Guerin from the Children's Alliance volunteer, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, which is the republic, which stand one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and for justice for all.
All right, thank you very much. The council did meet in closed session, and I think you probably put it up here, Mr. City Attorney. Would you?
Yes, the council met in closed session to consider a claim filed by Kurt Ziegler. No action was taken.
Great. All right, thank you very much. Okay, item 1A is presentations by the public on matters not on the agenda but within the jurisdiction of the council. And I have several slips to speak, and I believe they are all on 1A. So we'll start off with Karen Legrand. Good evening.
Good evening. Hi, I'm here representing the pastor of Lighthouse Covenant Church. He was unable to make it, so he asked that I come and speak to you on behalf of the congregations in West Sacramento. First, we want to thank the council members for your sincere commitment to serving the families in this community and for your insight into the future of developing economic infrastructure within our community. We're really very grateful for the positive influence that you've had in our community. And I am here to point out that we have a unique opportunity before us to continue to shape our community for the betterment of our occupants here. In light of the fire that consumed the Broderick Christian Center, we have a singular moment in time where we really have the opportunity to consider how we as a community will interact with this population and how we will handle situations of homelessness in the future. We want to implement future solutions that are humane and that are compassionate and productive when we deal with these issues of homelessness. And we believe that if we develop a collaborative plan, we as a community can develop homeless services that serve as a source of pride within our community rather than being seen as a nuisance. In light of the emerging development projects that are going on the riverfront, it is our urgent hope that the City Council will add issues of homelessness to the top priority list for 2012. This would allow more vigorous dialogue between parties that are interested in developing productive solutions, developing infrastructure that can serve the community of West Sacramento for generations to come. We have begun to sow the seeds for developing these types of solutions by meeting with Councilman Johannesson and members of the other homeless shelters that are in Yolo County, as well as many representatives from the faith community. And our goal is to ensure that homelessness is handled in our community in a way that benefits us as a first-class city by giving careful consideration to the potential outcomes and the best practices for dealing with homelessness. We have seen regional models of self-contained and clean overnight shelters that work with guests in obtaining services that they need in order to pursue a productive life direction, whether that is alcohol or drug addiction treatment or vocational training or mental health services. And we embrace and encourage this type of model in our community as well. The Yolo County Wayfarer works in partnership with the community, with law enforcement, and with the city, and has a very productive way of handling the situation in their community, and we would embrace that. So on behalf of the faith community in West Sacramento, we would ask that you put the issues of homelessness on a priority list for 2012, and we also would welcome any opportunities you may see for us to help serve in any way we can to assist in these types of issues. This is really a unique opportunity that we have to develop solutions for this problem in the future. Thank you very much for your time.
Great, thank you. The next speaker is Mr. Stephen Anderson.
Hi, good evening. I'm Stephen Anderson, and I'm also representing the Embrace Ministry at Lighthouse Covenant Church. I do also thank you for a lot of the good work in the city with the redevelopment on the waterfront, the rail and port infrastructure, positive things we're seeing in the city. I do want to also encourage you as you look towards your strategic planning retreat coming up in a few weeks to include homelessness as a top agenda item for the coming year. And I say this from several different perspectives. One is the good work that Mark has been facilitating so far within the Homeless Solutions Task Force and bringing up members of the faith community and service providers to constructively engage with the city on long-term solutions that really help individuals come out of homelessness. And I acknowledge that may not have been the case in the past in terms of constructive engagement, but there is an opening now for constructive engagement with the city from a lot of leaders within the community. The second is that I've been previously a board member in Davis Community Meals in Davis, which provides very solid supportive services to help individuals transition from homelessness. And I've seen the value of constructive dialogue and constructive working between providers and city and council officials. And so when that cooperation is there, it's never perfect, but when that cooperation is there, a lot of real solutions that help real people can get a lot of traction. And so I encourage, again, homelessness policies from that perspective. Finally, I do acknowledge from the Business Walk survey this last year is that the number one issue that business leaders said that needs to be changed has to do with security and homelessness. So it's up on the radar of our city, and in part, proactive solutions would be a positive thing, not just for those individuals, but for the city as a whole. So I do thank you for your potential consideration of homelessness on the top 10 strategic items for this coming year as you move forth on your retreat this month. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next speaker is Mr. Bill Lowell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. William Lowell, West Sacramento for the record. And as you noticed a couple of months ago, even though I started out from West Sacramento to take what appeared on paper to get me to Woodland on time for the YOLO bus meeting, because that bus was so busy, made so many stops, we got there in Woodland about 15 minutes later than we might have had everything been on time. And then since that time, I've noticed YOLO bus has an express bus to Woodland from downtown Sacramento every 15 minutes, and yet at least half of those have no passengers on them, or maybe one or two at the most. And so I strongly suggest that half of those be reallocated to a 42A that would serve not only Woodland but West Sacramento and Davis, and reduce the 45 from an every 15-minute service to an every half-hour service, and we would more effectively serve those who are intended to be served. And I, in a little note here from my peripheral neuropathy meeting, which will be a week from Thursday at the library from 12:30 to 2:30, one of our staff says we're looking for a nutrition expert. So if we know of any nutrition expert that would like to share their knowledge, why, they're more than welcome, as is the rest of the public. And finally, got a pair of shoes that aren't that old, but while they look pretty husky and everything, there's certain spots on the bottom that wear out rather quickly. And believe it or not, it took me over 30 years to realize how come I was getting sore heels. And it's it's because of these olive trees and cherry trees, or the seeds there too, that drop on the sidewalk, and you just, instead of kicking them all aside, you just go ahead and step on them. Next thing you know, those seeds pop up inside the heel of your shoe, and you're walking around, you can't figure out why your heels are in pain. And so, like I say, for some reason or other, I just decided to feel around down there and try to figure out what was the problem, and I finally found the seed to my problem. So, thank you.
Good. Knew it was coming. Thank you, Bill. All right, next speaker is Mr. Rick Arunyaksen, I believe. I'm getting that correctly?
Good evening. The reason I came today because due to I have a building on Jefferson Boulevard, and my tenant got notice from the coast enforcement people saying something about the sign and everything, and that's why I bring me to the city today. As you know, now I'm no longer in business because I quit, retired, because I can't handle anymore this kind of pressure. Well, anyway, the reason I want to ask the city maybe consider something about all the fee and everything. I know the city need the money, but we try to raise the money some other way besides, together from the business people alone. So I come today. The reason is the coast enforcement tried to tell my tenant that they can't put the sign outside on the right of way, which is belong to me, the property, the private property. But they said that's city right of way, so we can't put the sign up. And my tenant just moved into the building over years ago. And now they come around tell my tenant that they have to go get a permit for the sign. All they did is replace the font of the sign. And I don't think the city should charge them for the permit to put in the signs, just the face of the sign, because they didn't do anything else to the sign, just change name. Okay, so I just want to let you know that we all try to make a living, and my tenant is a young people who try to get ahead and try to make a good living, and we should encourage them instead of try to collect more money from them, and they already tight the way it is. So maybe I'd like to see the city change some of the policy or make more lenient with all this newcomer and some of the people to come into the city, because our city keeps telling us we are business friendly. But this is not very friendly, if you ask me, because some of the small business people can't afford this kind of friendliness. So I'd like to see you people see you can change some of this idea about, try to raise the money. I understand the city tried to raise the money, but I don't know what you guys can do to solve this kind of problem.
All right.
I appreciate it.
What's the address, Rick?
1001 Jefferson Boulevard. Yeah. I don't mean that we can put junky sign out there, anything like that, because this sign you can see almost all the business now. They have advertisement sign. I don't know, you notice or not, it looked like a flag. A curb, like a sailboat. And those, not cheap, they cost $200-300. And all this new business, they need all the help they can get to make people realize where they are. And they have the business here, so people can see that, they're there. So they need all those advertisements.
All right.
And they can't afford to go advertisement in the papers, spend a lot of money.
Right.
So I'd really appreciate it. You
Okay,
could.
great. Well, thank you very
you.
much. Unfortunately, Rick, and thank you. Unfortunately, we can't have the conversation up here this evening. State law precludes us from talking about issues that we might have future considerations of. So we can give some direction. So I think my response to your concern, it's not about the money as so much. It's about, good, fair practices and equity in terms of signage throughout the community. And we have to enforce that because invariably, over time, things change. So, but I would encourage you to talk to the city manager. I know there's a lot of sign issues currently because as we're now entering into the first few years of an ordinance that's been being worked on for the last 10 years. So tenants are finding out slowly but surely that there are new ordinances in place. And it's also about a matter of fairness and equity as it applies to all businesses. So I don't want to engage in the debate here this evening, but I just wanted to share with you. If you want to follow up with the city manager, I'm sure he would have some suggestions or ideas on how to proceed at this point. But we can't. But we can't go back and forth this evening.
No, I'm not expect you to respond me right away, anything like that. I just want to let the government understand that at least you got to give some of the new business some time to do the advertisement to push the business, establish the business.
Right. No, and that conversation would occur with the city manager's office. I would encourage you to do that. That would be the best way to get some reprieve from.
I appreciate that.
Yep, you're very welcome.
Yeah, because I've been in this town for a long time, but I noticed I get those kind of complaints to my business a long time ago.
I understand. I think we're trying to be fair, but we also want to be.
Yeah, I know. I understand that. That's the trouble with the law, is to have two sides.
Great.
You got to see the people to survive. If they can't survive, they can't be in business. And they don't be in business, the city don't get no money.
Right.
Right?
Yep. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. And the previous speakers, I know that came up this evening regarding the homeless issue. It is an issue that's been near and dear. There's been a lot of good work in the community. I know the council, many of us have been out there to see some of the good work that's happening. And so thank you very much as well for coming up this evening. But again, we can't have the conversation. It's not on the agenda. But thank you very much for coming this evening. All right.
With comment to Rick's issue, since we know the address now, guess what? It's all being taken care of. Our community development director is
Perfect timing.
perfect timing. Thank you.
Great.
That's quick work.
That is a small city.
You might not be happy, but it's quick work. No, I'm just kidding.
All right, item 1A is presentations, item 1B, council communications or assignments. Are there any reports this evening by Mr. Hannison?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Let's see, first of all, I attended the city-county 2x2 on January 25th. It looks like the major agenda item there was a discussion about weight limits coming into town along Road 22. And I think what's happening is at the staff level, they're looking at what kind of signage might be appropriate to address the egg trucks that are going up and down there, maybe a different route to allow them to go straight to the freeway rather than bypassing or using that route to bypass go through neighborhoods. Had a short discussion on shared services. We had an update on that. Shared services being looked at include animal services, dispatch, and there's some work going into purchasing. Staff is working on that as well to come back to us on a more inclusive list. Today, actually, I attended the Port Commissioner Luncheon. This is the 12th Annual California Maritime Leadership Symposium. And basically, it's a group of port commissioners from up and down the state that are sponsoring this lunch to talk about what's going on in the ports. And really, the focus now is what's happening is there's a port being developed in Mexico, the Lazaro Cardenas, which people may know about. But it's a huge complex that's going to have direct rail access through Laredo to Kansas City to, I believe, Chicago. It's going to be in Mexico. It's not going to have the environmental regulations. It's not going to have play by the same rules. On the Canadian side, there's Prince Rupert, which is getting an incredible amount of Canadian subsidies, both in rail and other subsidies there. So what's happening is there's a conversation now with the West Coast ports that maybe rather than fighting with each other, which may have happened in the past, that now is the time to band together and come up with a common solution on what California ports are going to do to maintain their competitiveness. So it was just basically, we had an assembly person and a senator at this meeting, and I think they listened to the comments, but I think what's going to happen is there's going to be a type of commissioner discussion group formed at the state level to really start coordinating these ideas and how to do this, which is going to be a good thing. So that was an interesting development. I think that is it. Thank you.
Mr. Christoph?
No, well, we had a JPA meeting, flood control meeting, and the commission heard from staff and engineers about all of the different proposals, the 3 or 4 different proposals that are being proposed. And there were some questions asked. There's some additional information that is being looked at, and they're going to be bringing that back this month in February. And I think in March, the commission or the JPA is going to make a recommendation on what we probably should do. Nothing is set in stone because that's only really 30% of the design is done. And this, in essence, sort of moves it to the next level, which will get 60% of design. And there may be some tweaking, and there may be some things that we can do to assist the property owners out there. The main issue that I'm talking to today is along the Sacramento River. And there's a number of homes out there that may have to be either set back, actually removed, and, you know, proper compensation will have to accompany all of that. So we had some discussion on that, and there will be some we have an agenda item tonight on flood control, and it should answer some additional questions if the council has any. And we'll just sort of take it from there and try to do the best job that we possibly can. Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you very much. Mr. Ledesma.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. I have a few reports to give. So back on the 19th of January, I attended the SACOG Board of Directors meeting as an alternate. Mr. Our mayor could not attend that meeting, so I did attend. It was a rather short meeting, mainly consisting of installing new board members and the new chair, Mr. Peter Hill, as well as there were some board assignments on the, which are, as we all know, very important on SACOG. Our mayor is still very a part of the committees that are there, particularly the Transportation Committee. He's no longer the chair. I know he served there for a while, probably longer than any other SACOG board member has been able to before. So, but he's not this year. But his work is we're bearing the fruit of that now. So, thank him for his service there. But in addition, there was some discussion around a shared services task force that is being implemented by the new chair, where he's assigned some folks from around the region to start looking at shared services or opportunities for that. It's an ad hoc committee. There's no set agenda or time frame, but I think our mayor is a part of that, and hopefully there's some momentum and some initiatives that we can garner some support from on that. Finally, there was at that board meeting a long discussion around redevelopment. The board had voted to approve support for the bill on the to extend the time frame around redevelopment, Senator Padilla's bill, which didn't go anywhere, but the SACOG did get behind it. But there was a lot of good discussion from around the region about where redevelopment has gone, how they're dealing with the dissolution, which is in effect today, and also about what's next. And so I think we were still far ahead in that endeavor, thanks to the work of our staff and the task force. But one of the items that did creep in was the discussion of a proposal by Senator Steinberg. And already that started to bring some divisive nature into the SACOG building, although they all agreed that they're divisive amongst the bill and not with each other, at least not yet. So anyway, so I'm sure that we'll be hearing more from the mayor if that continues to go forward. So that was it for the SACOG meeting on the 19th. On the 25th of January, I attended the Downtown Riverfront Streetcar Policy Steering Committee meeting. Thanks to Maureen Pasco for getting that organized, along with the city of Sacramento, Regional Transit and Yolo County Transit District. I was in attendance along with the mayor. Councilmember Johannesson was there as an alternate, as well as Councilman Villegas, who was there as the Yolo County Transit board representative. But in there was some really great information. The mayor shared his visit. He had a scheduled visit with both mayors of Sacramento and West Sacramento to visit the White House and with Secretary LaHood. So the mayor gave some briefings on that. The short story is, based on his assessment, is that they're aware of our projects, they're positive of our projects. We probably have some more work to do to get it a little farther along. And we all admitted to probably having to sharpen our pencils a little more and kind of keep that moving. I should say Councilmember Cohn from Sacramento was also there, and we were all in agreement that taking his assessment just was more incentive for us to keep moving forward. In addition, the city of Sacramento outlined its streetcar planning study in which they unveiled their initial route based on, and they went through their process. They do have an initial route, which in essence, as you exit Tower Bridge from West Sacramento into Sacramento, you would hang a left or go north up towards to where the intermodal is proposed to be. Would wind back down along Capitol Mall. I think that's right. No, I'm sorry, on K Street, I think. And then wind up around Midtown, around the Convention Center, and then reach into parts of Midtown. So they have done some significant work. They did a very good process to make sure they talked to many of their constituents and absorbed their needs, but they felt very confident that that route would be a good route to start. That's being heard on February 7th, I believe, next Tuesday. It'll be at the Sacramento City Council, and so hopefully they'll get some good feedback from their council, and we'll continue to move that forward. In addition, there was some discussion around the next steps for funding and keeping work going. The good news is that I think everybody at that meeting wanted to see this move forward as rapidly as possible. So I think the scope of work that was outlined, the budget needs, and then aligning it to a degree with what Regional Transit is trying to do with their green line on the light rail system, leveraging that project, would be all good impetuses for keeping this moving forward. I left there very positive about the direction we're going. I think we have some challenges, certainly, and we're on track, but with some new grant opportunities through what we heard from the Department of Transportation, I think everyone's incented now to move forward. So that was the third meeting I attended, and if the other council members there want to chime in a little more, feel free. Finally, I attended on that same Wednesday, the 25th, I attended the Yolo County Children's Alliance meeting as an advisory committee member. It was an important meeting because it was their annual planning session. Around April is Child Abuse Prevention Month. So they had a lot of stakeholders from around Yolo County that are involved in child abuse prevention education and services. And they have a very aggressive campaign planned where there'll be lots of education, a shared calendar. We'll be looking for city staff to put together a resolution that month, as well as some education on websites and editorials that they're going to be asking us to share out for our community. So we'll be looking for some action on that soon. So that's it, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
A lot happening on that Wednesday. Also on that Wednesday, I attended the Sacramento Regional County Sanitation District. And just one item I want to bring to the council's attention. As the council will recall, about 10 years ago, there was the opportunity to purchase some economic development treatment capacity credits. If the council will recall, we were able to purchase some of those credits basically to offset some of the cost, the future cost of the sewer hookup for commercial and residential uses in our community. That was available to all the cities within the district. So Sacramento, Central Sides, Folsom, Elk Grove, Rancho Cordova, and Sac County were also involved. At that time, the idea was that those credits would be used within a 10-year period. So the credit essentially allowed you to purchase a hookup for a fraction of the cost, but you had a time frame with which you would have to use those credits. Well, over the last 10 years, as you know, the cost of that hookup has gone up exponentially in some cases. And we now have a couple different ways in which we determine what that cost is, both infill and not infill, considered infill and new area impact fees. So the fees that were at the time when we purchased a lot of these credits, and many of the cities purchased them 10 years ago, the cost of a hookup fee, if you will, for lack of a better term, was around $1,400. That cost has in some cases gone up to $6,500. So essentially, those credits now that were expected to have some value have been tremendously valuable. And in fact, now what's happening is we have to figure out a policy or develop a policy in which to buy down those credits, because now there are thousands and thousands of credits still out there unused, and their value is way more than what they were originally intended to be, which means everybody else is going to have to pick up the slack for the cost of doing business when these credits are cashed in. So we've used many of our credits. I think we only had 500 to begin with, somewhere in that neighborhood. We've used about a little over half, but many other cities haven't used any of theirs, and they had many more to begin with. So long way of saying we need to figure out a way to get these credits, get them used and get them off the books, because as time goes on and as the cost of doing business goes up, those credits will have a tremendous value, and the rest, the difference in the work on the treatment plant is going to be borne by others. So we're continuing to work on that. All right, if there are no other reports, item 1C is council appointments, and we have none this evening. So we will move on to item 2, which is presentation of a proclamation supporting the 2012 Yolo County Earned Income Tax Credit Awareness Campaign. We're looking for a motion on that proclamation.
I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. We have 2 representatives here. If you want to come up this evening, and the proclamation, Mr. Johannesson has it. And we'll be presenting it.
This way? Okay.
All right, I'm not going to go through the proclamation here, but basically, this is the work of Assemblymember Yamada's office to really create public awareness for the Earned Income Tax Credit. And for those who don't know what that is, you have to file a tax return to get it, and it's up to, I think, $5,700. So what happens is there's a group of volunteer income taxes through the Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program, which is an IRS-sponsored tax program that volunteers actually go out and help people file their returns. And so what that means is that $5,700 per return. In 2011, in Yolo County, I think there was $2.1 million of tax refunds that were generated from this effort. And so that's $2.1 million going directly into our economy. So it's like a very appropriate mini stimulus. And Eric Rodriguez is here, and Marco Guerra, nice to meet you. Here to accept the proclamation. And do you have a few things to say?
So I'm Eric Rodriguez with Assemblymember Yamada's office, and we thank the council for recognizing the Yolo County Earned Income Awareness Campaign. As Councilmember Johannesson said, and we wanted to also especially note that he was instrumental in helping us recruit volunteers here in West Sacramento. We thank you for that. We know about 1 in 5 West Sacramento residents are not claiming the Earned Income Tax Credit. And this is a credit for families who make up to $50,000 a year. And so, we've really seen that at the workshop we had in West Sacramento, in Woodland last weekend, that one of the families who came made under $20,000 a year, and through the work of the VITA volunteers like Marco, received a tax refund of over $7,000. So here's a family who's going to receive 1/3 of their yearly wage from the help of VITA volunteers, free of charge. And so we want to invite the council and the residents of West Sacramento to come to our tax assistance workshop in partnership with the Yolo County Children's Alliance, Washington Unified School District, and the Internal Revenue Service. It'll be this Saturday from 9 to 3 at River City High School in the library. So we hope that all community members who can come. And if they are not able to come this Saturday, we're fortunate this year to have 4 VITA sites here in West Sacramento. And they are at Holy Cross Preparatory Academy, and they're going to be Tuesdays and Thursdays from 6 to 8. No appointments are required. All community members are welcome. They are also going to be at the Yolo County Department of Employment and Social Services. Appointments are required, but they are from 8:30 to 3:30. We're fortunate, again, that the Yolo County Children's Alliance will have 2 sites, both at their center at the Alice Norman Center, Monday through Friday without appointments, Thursdays by appointment. And again, they're going to be, for the first time this year, the Arthur F. Turner Library will be serving as a VITA site. So again, we invite all of you to come. It is a mini stimulus package for the city of West Sacramento, and we hope that residents will come and get the money back that they've earned and they deserve. And I would like to have Marco Guerra share a few words. Marco is one of the community volunteers who come to help. He spent 24 hours learning tax law. He's a 2011 graduate of River City High School. And now he's going to be preparing taxes and already has started. So Marco has some words to share with you as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to say I'm Marco Guerra from Yolo County Children's Alliance that I'm helping. Yolo County Children's Alliance is currently assisting families with free tax preparations Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. at the 1200 Anna Street, Alice Norman Education Center, and by appointment at the Turner Library in West Sacramento. Yolo County Children's Alliance also has a West Sacramento 2 community resources specialist that assists families with applying for Medi-Cal, Healthy Families, Kaiser, and Call Fresh programs and other resources as needed. Thank you.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you. Marco and Erica, thank you very much for coming this evening. It's a wonderful program, and I know that it got a lot of attention last year, and actually it was quite the stimulus package here in West Sacramento, and there were a couple $100,000 returned to folks who otherwise would not have seen that money here in our community, so hopefully they spent it here as well. So thanks again for coming out, both of you. All right, we have 3 items on the consent agenda, and I have 1 slip to speak. Are there any questions or concerns about any of the items on the consent? I just have 1 question on item 3.
I do too.
Okay. So it's item 3, I think, is the one we have questions on. So, Mr. Lowell, you had a request to speak on item 3?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. William Lowell, West Sacramento for the record. And anytime we have to raise the fees, I know it's best if we can put it across to make it as least objectionable to the public. And the thought occurred to me, since this is a learning ladder, why not stress how it helps provide the steps for success, and also how important it is for moving up in the world by using that learning ladder. Thank you.
Very well. Thank you. Very nice. All right, Mr. Kristoff, you had questions?
Yeah, I just had a question of Carol. I read in here where it's fully supported by fees and will not require a general fund subsidy. But what happens if the grants that we are applying for aren't forthcoming? Is there a fee adjustment?
Well, the grants are the grants that are being referred to in the report are for the Community Development Block Grant funds, which we have already received, and those would be provided to income-eligible families to offset their fees that are in the report here noted. So if we don't continue to get Community Development Block Grant funds or other funds, then all the slots will be at market rate. Will be market rate for market rate families.
Okay, thank you.
Carol, the one question I had, I know this is one of the things that the council had talked about many years ago in terms of providing child care opportunities for city employees, and it was always a hope that we would have something on site here. So next best thing was going to be across the street of the community center. Do we know or have any sense of what the projected use would be by city employees? And the reason I ask is because we're only offering a 5% discount, and I didn't know, it seemed like it would be, we would want to incentivize it because it's so close. If there's room to actually increase that to a more,
To answer your first question, no, we don't really have, we do have some employees, especially in this building, who have young children who are eligible or will be eligible in a year or so, whether they take advantage of it or not. I think we chose 5% because the rates themselves are very, very competitive. They're below the average for child care centers in the area. So we felt that going too much more below 5% would be, it would be as advantageous for us to go that much further below.
okay. Yeah, I saw that it was very competitive, so that's certainly a good start. Okay, well, great. Well, thank you very much. If there are no other questions on any of the items on consent,
Move consent?
we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Time set, agenda item 6 is community development services. Item 6 is public hearing and consideration of resolution 12-1 authorizing submittal of an application to the State of California Neighborhood Stabilization Program for the NSP3 funding, and that's Ms. Hamilton.
Good evening. We're here before the council to ask that you conduct a public hearing to receive comment on an application for Neighborhood Stabilization Program funding. On January 11th, we came before the council and provided a workshop on this funding source. The city received a little over $1 million in NSP1 funds last year, and with those funds are dedicated for remediation of foreclosed and vacant homes. We've purchased, rehabbed, and resold 10 homes. Our 11th one just went on the market. It's just about ready. Rehab is almost complete. And we expect to have at least funds for one more home. The application to be discussed this evening would bring in another $2.6 million for the same purpose. However, the homes, there will be some differences. The homes will be for lower income households than before. Before we could sell to moderate income. Now we're limited to low income households. 25% of the funds are restricted even more to very low income households. We would expect those to be turned into affordable, long-term affordable rental properties. At the council's direction, we would, we've already received the council's direction last time, sorry. So if you have any further questions, I'm available for those.
Are there any questions at this point?
I guess how you speak on this?
Yeah, I do have an item, a request to speak, so I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing and ask that our lone speaker, Ms. Diana Walker-Smith, come forward.
Diana Walker-Smith. I'm with Habitat for Humanity, Yolo County. I'm just here to give my support to the project. Brighton Broderick has suffered quite a bit, like a lot of communities since 2008, and I think this is a wonderful opportunity to provide housing for low-income families that desperately need it. So thank you.
Great. Well, thank you for coming. All right. See no other slips. We're going to close the public hearing and return it back to the council for discussion.
I guess I would just have one comment. And when Louise said that, we're going to purchase the homes, refurbish them, do whatever they do, and then sell them back to somebody, and those would more than likely be long-term rentals. I would really like to see if we can sell them back so that it's not rental property. There's a certain amount of pride and ownership and upkeep and everything else that goes into somebody owning their home. And to have them, or have most of them, go back into a rental situation, I really don't think is as healthy as it would be if it was home ownership. I'd just make that comment.
Anderson, sorry.
Thanks. Yeah, I just reiterate that comment as well. You know, I'm on the board of the West Sacramento Housing Development Corporation, and we found that you can have low-income housing that works well within a community, but it really has to be managed well. But particularly in Brighton Broderick, I think we discussed at the last meeting that we're starting to get a lot of rentals, high concentration of rentals in Brighton Broderick. And it really, I would agree, we really should need to focus on home ownership. We do get the pride of neighborhood development in that case.
Okay, thank you. Looks like I had a question, unless you want to comment or respond back to the comments that have been made. You can comment, because I have a question as well. Do we have any sense of what's happened with the homes that we have purchased and refurbished and rehabilitated under this program or other similar programs in the past? Because I know we've been doing this for quite some time. Have we ever gone back to sort of answer some of the questions or concerns that have been raised this evening to see what's happened with them and what is the status in terms of their ownership or rental situation?
Well, all of the homes that we've done in the past were home ownership units. They were not rental units, so single-family homes. I just want to make sure that it's clear in this from the report. 25% of the funds have to be for very low-income households, not 25% of the units. So when we do home ownership, we sell those units and we get money back. So when we do rental, there's not going to be enough. We're not going to be selling them. We're pretty much going to be turning them over to a nonprofit, because there's just not going to be for very low income rents levels. There's not going to be very much money coming back to those nonprofits to pay any kind of debt service. So unit wise, we're going to probably have more than 75% of the units be home ownership to low income families, because we're going to get more units out of our low income money than we will out of our very low income money. That's our anticipation.
And there's a possibility of some more money, right? If things work out the way we're hoping and others don't apply and we actually qualify and we get the area expanded, we have the potential to get some more money to
Yes,
grow the program.
I have checked with the two other jurisdictions that are eligible for this NSP3, and they did apply for their full amount of funding, but there's still definitely a possibility that jurisdictions that received either NSP1 or NSP2 from the state could have disencumbered funds very soon if they weren't able to get their money out quickly enough, because this is stimulus money, and if they don't get it out quickly enough, the state is going to disencumber their funds and give it to jurisdictions that can. And we have a good proven track record of getting these properties purchased, rehabbed, and sold. So we would have a good chance of getting any money if it were to be returned.
Great. All right. So we've opened and closed the public hearing as we're required to do. It's now back to the council for adoption of a resolution.
Mr. Mayor, Pro Tem, I would move that we adopt Resolution 12-1, authorizing submission of application to the state of California for $2.6 million in NSP funding, and if additional NSP funding is available at a later date, authorize the city manager or his designee to apply for or accept an additional $5 million.
Okay, we have a motion.
I'll second.
And a second by Councilmember Ledesma. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. All right. And we got it all right? Okay, all right. So let's see. Next regular agenda item 7 is Community Development Service Presentation and first reading of Ordinance 12-2, amending sections 5.04.180 of Title 5 of the West Sacramento Municipal Code. And that's, it says Charlene. Yeah, Kathy, good evening.
Good evening. In January 2011, the council approved changes to the Book of Fees. One component of those changes pertain to the fees charged for business licenses. Staff recently discovered that when those fees were changed in the Book of Fees, that a corresponding ordinance change to the municipal code was not processed, and because of that, There is one section left in the fee section of the municipal code that still allows non-local businesses who can provide a valid business license from another municipality to obtain a business license free of charge. That was not the intent when the fee change was made. We've been advised by the city attorney's office that the municipal code trumps the book of fees, and they recommended that we process this fee change, this ordinance change to correct this slight error, and that's what we're here to do tonight. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
All right. Are there any questions? Nope, seeing none. I have no slips to speak on this, so it looks pretty straightforward. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I would move that we waive first reading and read by title only ordinance 12-2, amending section 5.04, 1.180 and of the title of the West Sacramento Municipal Code, and inform the audience that the second reading will be scheduled for February 15th.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much once again. So that takes us to the next page, which is item 8, and that's consideration of approval of resolution 12-7, electing to become the successor agency to the West Sacramento Redevelopment Agency and approving the amended enforceable obligation payment schedule.
Well, tonight's meeting is a wake of sorts, as it is for the approximately 400 redevelopment agencies around the state that are dissolved as of today. It's also an evening for a new beginning in terms of the council's role as a successor agency. But we know that folks out in the community are wondering, what this all means. They're still trying to grapple with it. And we don't have all the answers yet, but tonight's report, I hope, will at least give you an indication of where we think things are going in the next 3 to 4 months in terms of the successor agency and its role in managing the affairs of the former redevelopment agency. When we were before you back in January, after the Supreme Court decision and the delay in schedule, we, like everyone else, were trying to figure out what was going to happen next. And so we convened an internal working committee, staff committee that includes Aaron Laurel, John Robinson, Nitish Sharma, myself. Obviously, other staff are helping us out as well as a steering committee that included the city manager, Carol Richardson, Charlene Hamilton, and Phil Wright. And so this group had been working last year and had already done a lot of analysis, as we presented to you, of what would happen if the redevelopment agency dissolved. But as we move forward, we realized that now we needed to interpret the legislation, and the legislation is not very well written. There are many inconsistencies in it, and it doesn't flesh out all the details. And we weren't getting a lot of direction from the state on this. So at the direction of the city managers in Yolo County, we did convene a working group with Davis, Woodland, Winters, and at a staff level, we met to coordinate, to share information. And the real issue is that we'd all be working with the county auditor controller on this, and we wanted to make sure that we were consistent. And so that as we move forward working with the county on the new paradigm, that we would all be on the same page. We've met with the county auditor controller, Howard Nuens. We've had meetings with him. We will continue to meet with him. And, I think the message there from the county auditor controller is they have some guidelines that the Auditor Controller Association has prepared, which is something we can look to. They are hoping to get audit guidelines, so we kind of know what to prepare for the audits that will come. But I think the point that Mr. Nuens made was that he wants to work with us to keep the state out of our business. And by coming up with good procedures, by being consistent, we're hoping that the state will pretty much leave the county up to managing the affairs of the successor agency. If there are things that are conflicting, the county doesn't know what to do, they really kick it up then to the state. So we're hoping that we will avoid that and keep the decisions local. And of course, you know, we've continued to work with the city attorney and reviewing all of our documents, legal opinions that are floating about. There have been a number of webinars that have been hosted by the California Redevelopment Agency and League of Cities, and these have been very helpful. Most of them have been attended by, you know, hundreds of cities on each call. And, you know, unlike other cities, you know, we weren't necessarily looking at opt-in as the only option. A lot of agencies out there are way behind where we are in terms of evaluating their affairs. You know, and there was one very helpful conference yesterday. Department of Finance and State Controller finally had their own webinar to inform us what would happen upon dissolution. They held it yesterday at 11 a.m., 13 hours before we were to dissolve. So, but, you know, tonight, you know, you will be asked to approve a resolution that is basically just going to confirm the City Council's role as successor agency. You have that role anyway. You would have had to pass a resolution opting out of that role prior to February 1st. You'll continue in that role. Right now, we have obligations going out to 2037. So unless things are defeased or paid off early, the successor agency will be around for quite some time. You have before you an amended EOPS. The first one was approved last August, and obviously with the extension in schedule by 4 months, now the amended EOPS will run through April 30th. We included an additional 2 months on there because of the PIDIA bill, SB 659, and the possibility that if that were approved, that we'd be looking at an extension of about 2 months. So since that bill hasn't gone anywhere, you know, you're looking at approving a schedule that's going to govern payments through April 30th. After that time, additional schedules will be developed that are going to be under the purview of the Oversight Board. But in terms of putting the EOPS together, obviously we're not going to, you know, I'm not going to go through every item, every tab, but we had some guiding principles, and we just wanted you to understand where we were coming from in preparing that. One is that we wanted to put on the EOPS only those items that we could justify and that would be in compliance with the requirements that, you know, through the legislation and through the information coming down from the state. We know they're going to be scrutinizing our expenditures, and so we put things on there that had contractual obligations, agreements, and that we could support. The second principle, we tried to look for a source of fund and how we would fund staff to the successor agency. So we have a budget there for the successor agency as of February 1st. About $443,000 is the amount that we could expend through June 30th. And then we also have ongoing CIP projects that are on there that staff would be able to charge to. Another principle is that, you know, the things on there are really obligations that we've had on our statement of indebtedness that we have to prepare every year for the state controller. So we feel that, you know, that's another support for everything we have on there. And then the way we've scheduled out payments, this is our fourth principle, we wanted to avoid any negative impact on the city's general fund and the city's treasury. So what that means is that current expenses in the current period would be funded by revenues on hand. In other words, we didn't want to be borrowing from the city with the anticipation that we would be getting revenue later from the county. And then, you know, finally, as we look at the EOPS, it's structured in a way that we're anticipating the money that will be coming back to the city as a distribution after all obligations are paid. And Madam Clerk, if we could pull up some slides, I just want to mention for a moment that as we go through the transition, as is coming into view there, I think you all have handouts. this is the way things were. And it doesn't require much explanation except to say, maybe in terms of percentages, so you can get an idea of how things were divided up in terms of the pie. Out of the tax increment we received, about 27% went to pass-through payments. About 3%, 2 to 3% went to county for administrative expenses. We had our 20% housing set aside, and about 51% was left over for projects, not for non-housing projects. And the thing that you don't see on that slide that I would point out is we used to have something called fund balance. So if we didn't spend it in the year, it carried over. That's no longer the case. We're going to have sweeps every 6 months. If we don't spend it, the funds go back to the county. And if we could have the next slide. As we look at what things are like now, on the top you see that there's something established called the Redevelopment Property Tax Trust Fund. This is at the county. The county controls this. They will provide to us twice a year funds to pay ongoing obligations and successor agency administration. There's 2 boxes there. And then there are other fees. The county controller will get a new fee. The county gets an additional fee in addition to what they used to get. And then pass-throughs. That was, I mentioned, 27%. Those are still in place as far as we know. There is still some question about pass-throughs.
Pass-through to the library, you mean, or?
Yeah, all of the pass-throughs we believe that all the pass-throughs that existed prior to dissolution will continue. And yes, the county libraries were part of that. But here's the silver lining is that at the end of the day, when you have a residual balance, the city will be there to get a large chunk, a sizable chunk of that residual, as we all know. And so, what we're looking at in terms of our next phase in projections and budgeting is how much will come back to us in 12-13. And I think last time we presented, an estimate to you, it was last September, and we believe that we would have about $3.25 million in 12-13 that would come back to a fund to be used for whatever unrestricted use, because it's no longer redevelopment money.
One quick question on residual balance and everything. So Washington Unified, Los Rios, Yolo County, Mosquito Abatement, and others, do they have this 3-month or 6-month window in order to pass and spend that money?
I don't believe that's the case. I believe that once the funds come to these entities, they don't have to spend them in any given time frame. That's property taxes they would receive from the county as a normal distribution.
But yet we have a responsibility under the RDA General Fund non-housing in order to spend whatever monies we get within 6 months' time? Did you say that earlier?
Yes, and it's going to be tightly controlled.
Well, that's crazy. That doesn't make any sense. Okay, none of this does, but okay, I'm sorry.
I think that we're talking about 2 different pots of money. Yeah. Paul, the money that has to be spent within 6 months is above that red line. Right, you're talking about the money that's distributed out. The money, the city's share that comes out of that residual box, that's treated like everybody else's residual share.
Okay. All right, okay, thank you.
And if I could, next slide. This is the budget, as far as we know, it's the only budget that the city council will be approving for the successor agency. The role will be of oversight board. We'll convene this month. In February, the board will likely convene, and we'll need to approve the next budget prior to April 15th. And the next budget under the Responsible Obligation Retirement Fund, that, that begins May 1st. And so the Oversight Board is going to play an important role, obviously, in making decisions about our agreements, about our payments. And what's great is the county's actually stepped in and said, you know, we think there needs to be an education process for the oversight boards, because, you know, obviously there'll be one for each jurisdiction, but the county wants to help us kind of educate these folks about what we do and ensure that by the time they make decisions on our budgets, they've had some, you know, redevelopment 101 training. In summary, in approving the EOPS tonight, you will be approving expenditures just through April 30th. For the most part, staff who are have been working on redevelopment projects will be able to continue to do so either as an enforceable obligation or as a successor agency administrative expense. During this period, the city is going to continue to make payments to our investors, to our development partners, and to our contractors. And we will be honoring those commitments using revenues on hand. There will be no new projects, but that's been the case since last year, June 29th. Again, on the uncertainty and where this is where we're going now is what happens after May 1st, and there are going to be decisions about payments while we will be preparing the budgets. The Oversight Board will play a big role. And the state of California, the Controller's Office and the Department of Finance will also be reviewing those budgets. So, the positive side is we will be in control as a successor agency, but there will be a new oversight role that we'll have to deal with.
Mr. Anderson?
Yeah, can you just run through one more time what the role of the Oversight Board is? What are they specifically going to be looking for?
Well, again, the legislation provides a general description of what their role is, but they will be, in addition to approving our budgets, our 6-month ROPS, they're going to be looking to wind down the redevelopment agency as quickly as possible, and that includes looking at our agreements. If there's a way to pay off an agreement, to end it sooner in a way that's beneficial to the taxing entities, they will do so. There's the issue of the sale of redevelopment agency assets, which, we don't have much direction on that right now, but we do know that that's going to be something that the Oversight Board plays a big role on. And the term expeditiously is in the legislation, so we have to assume that will be one of their early tasks.
But isn't there a marketability issue on the expeditiously as well? Oh. I thought that it wasn't just in a vacuum. There's also consideration of dumping huge amounts of property on a down market and the effect that's going to have on all the property.
That issue has come up in a number of settings, including the webinar that Department of Finance and the State Controller held yesterday. And I think they recognize those issues. They recognize that this all has to get worked out.
And just one more question on the accounting of this, then basically a redevelopment agency is going away. So the staff time and all, it's just going to be allocated to some area inside the city right now? Because I think, what's happening in a lot of cities is as redevelopment agencies go away, so do staff. And it doesn't sound like we're going to have...
Well, the staff that were formerly housed in Fund 290 and 291 will be moved into a new community investment fund. So they will be moved to that location
They'll
where...
be accounted for separately, distinctively, right?
They'll track their time. Their time can be funded from a number of things, whether if they're working on a successor agency function, if they're working on other city functions, real estate functions for other city departments, their funding would come from that. But they will be located in a new fund that's set up so that we can track that. What's really important is that because of the auditing that goes on, there's going to be an audit first of the redevelopment agency as of January 31st, and then of the successor agency. So we're directed under the legislation to create the Redevelopment Obligation Retirement Fund. And so that's the big new fund where everything gets moved to in terms of revenues we get from the county or fund balance or anything that's kind of left over from redevelopment goes in there. And that will have sub-funds. We have to put, debt payments in one. We have our ongoing projects like our CIP projects in another. And then we have to isolate the successor agency budget in another fund. So there's that tracking. And then, the one that I would point out that, we do want to track the revenue that comes back from property tax, after all obligations are paid, and there's that disbursement you saw on the slide. We're also going to create a fund to track that as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Ledesma?
Thank you. Thank you very much for the report and kind of the task as a successor agency we now have, or the responsibility we now have, because that's honest starting today, correct?
Correct.
We are the successor agency now. So the 7-member oversight board will, in essence, be overseeing our actions and the approval of this budget and the expenditures. So I appreciate your outlining of the principles of what went on that list and what didn't. And I'm glad you took the tack you did, basically looking at what we thought was in compliance with the spirit of the legislation, even because it wasn't very well written in the letter of the legislation. But I think so. Thank you for outlining that, and because I had a couple of questions looking at it and making sure that, knowing that's only going through April 30th, that we had allocated the enough for the staff time that would take to continue the work of the redevelopment agency, and I just want to make sure that the methodology you used in terms of you're moving all the staff time to a different fund, but it doesn't change the actual expenses associated with them. So you're saying that we have enough, we budget enough to kind of cover that and the associated expenses with them. My question is, now that I'm hearing about, and I didn't know this was the sweeps every 6 months of unused funds. If we underestimated or overestimated, is the process that you'll continue to make payments, and let's just say, for instance, we've underestimated and we owe more, and we have to pay out more? What will the role of the oversight committee be? Are they going to have to approve those expenses that are above our budget, a variance to our budget?
They would have to approve any modifications. Nothing says you can't, after you approve an ROPS, modify it. So we could anticipate that there would be modifications. We don't anticipate that sweeps will be a big issue from the successor agency back to the county. It's more the sweeps will go from the county's, property tax, trust fund to the taxing entities every 6 months. For the most part, we're gonna try to be accurate with our budgeting. Though when assets are sold, that's something that would be swept from the successor agency back to the county.
So who is the actual entity that's going to be receiving our budget, our budget updates once a month or quarterly? Who will be getting that, and to know? I mean, the oversight board has to look at it. Is the county's taking is the lead agency here in terms of?
The county will be the lead agency, but every expenditure we make gets reviewed, well, in the legislation. Again, there are these inconsistencies and practical issues where you just go, it ain't gonna happen. But, I mean, the legislation says Department of Finance and the controller have a review period where they can object to an expenditure. So it's almost like if you're gonna make a payment, they have a time period in which they can review that payment before you make it and object to it. And and that I can say that does not seem practical. And what we've talked to with Howard Nguyen's is, how asking the same questions as you are. How's this all going to work? And because Howard doesn't have guidelines yet from the state, he can't tell us.
Well, I guess, and maybe it's, you can explain this, because what I fear is if somebody judges our expenses for staff time, not as exorbitant or, not likely, there are real people that depend on, that are doing work and depend on the money we're paying, and we're gonna pay them. And so that, if there's some dispute over that, I mean, is there a risk here that we would have to, that another fund from our general fund would have to absorb that?
I don't think it will happen with respect to employees. Basically, we will have to live in the longer term from the administrative fee, and that's a percentage, and we get it. And it's that then becomes a source of money that we use to pay for staff to run the successor agency. So it's basically, we have to budget. We'll get that much money regardless of how we spend that. Then there will be special projects of various types that we are a part of enforceable obligations. That's where we might see challenges. So there might be a specific enforceable obligation that we have on our list, and then we put it in on the ROPS. And the Oversight Committee says, we don't agree with that. And they say, we won't authorize that. In that case, we simply won't get that money. They probably aren't, it's always possible that they could approve it and then go back and disapprove it, or they could approve it and the controller could disapprove of it, which case the money will have to come back. And the concept is that you really only take the money you need to operate for the next 6 months. You have a long-term plan of how much you're going to need every 6 months going into the future, but you only get the money you need to operate for the next 6 months, and then by the time that runs out, you get another 6 months. So that's the kind of the control. It's unlikely you're going to get way ahead or way behind on these things because you only have 6 months operation.
Well, and thank you. That clarifies sort of what I'm suspecting, listening to the procedures you're putting into place, and what I worry is, obviously, is just what potential impact it has on us, and because I think we all understand the responsibility of the successor agency and its role and its tasks. Is just want to make sure that we get what we need to actually perform that, and so you've given me a better framework to understand it, but I still don't. And I don't think you have an answer for this. I still don't understand how a 7-member oversight board that hasn't been named yet and has to deal with these daily issues.
And has to function without any staff.
Exactly. That's the point I'm making is that this is, never mind. I think we all know where that's headed. Who else has been named successor agents? Have the rest of Yolo County?
All of
them have been named themselves as successor agencies?
Yes.
Do we know of any that have not? I know LA did not, correct?
LA City, yes.
That's it.
Riverbank.
Riverbank. And Riverbank. Kind of two ends of the spectrum.
I probably have a ton of other questions, but no, this is really, I really got to applaud the work all of you are doing on being in front of this issue. I don't think a lot of our city folks and understand how on top of this we are. And you're a little bit flying blind, I know, and so I really applaud you guys being proactive, working with the county, talking to everybody you're doing to try to get the best gauge that we can to make sure we're doing A, the right thing, and B, making sure we can continue to manage the city the way we have. So I just want to say thank you. This is good information.
Christoph.
Yeah, Paul. This oversight board, they're going to have the authority to sell some properties and things that aren't deemed as important. I mean, that are not really part of the ROSP. Do we know yet what properties those are? I mean, because I don't see them. I see where you've put this whole ROPS together, and it seems like it covers everything that we're going to have expenditures for. So is there a slice of property over on Meadow Road that is going to be included in some decision-making by the Oversight Board?
Let me take a stab at answering your question. We believe what's going to happen, kind of the scuttlebutt, is that the Department of Finance is going to want to know about all of our assets and any asset transfers. So the first thing they'll want to know, and the request hasn't come through yet, is what do we have?
Right.
And, you know, in a big effort, you know, there were a lot of jurisdictions that were transferring assets last year. I mean, lots of them. And we didn't do that. We didn't do that. But those that did are going to get scrutinized. And I can't tell you, you know, how quickly the Oversight Board is going to direct us to begin to sell off assets, particularly in a down economy. But, you know, right now, I think that the state is going to be focusing in on getting assets back that have been transferred.
Oh, I agree wholeheartedly. But I mean, I do think that, you know, Washington Unified, Los Rios, Yolo County, Sac Mosquito Abatement, Library, they're going to want to see if there are some assets there that can be sold that can generate funds for each one of those entities. And so I'm wondering, do we have a list of, I mean, we have some residual properties in different places. I mean, you know, a slice off of Riverbank Road or a slice of property off of someplace else. And those would be the properties that I would think would go to the Oversight Committee first before any of these on the ROPS. Because those ones on the ROPS, there's a funding mechanism, there's been accounting, there's been all kinds of things that go along with it, regardless of even if it's the property that has gone from the port to the city. No matter what, there's a use for that, and there's some real planning involved, and there's some activity that is going on. Instead of selling off that big chunk, wouldn't we just sell off a rail spur or whatever it was? Wouldn't we sell off those first?
It's possible. You know, one added discussion point in all of, you know, all the sessions we've been in where this issue's come up is there's some sense that the state might allow, if there's been an asset transfer or if an asset has a public use on it. I mean, lots of redevelopment agencies have public buildings. You know, we were talking to one city, they've got a fire station that's owned by the redevelopment agency. Whoa. But that's fairly common. And cities in this county, you know, have that issue. And we didn't, but you know, there was a lot of discussion and, you know, just right now speculation about what the direction would be with regards to assets. And
okay,
we don't know.
I might just add, annually we file a list of our assets. So it is not a mystery what they are. I would not assume that there'll be a prioritization for those properties that don't have uses over properties that do have uses. I think they're probably, if you look statewide, and I'm not going to speak for our particular oversight committee, but I would guess the oversight committees will look at properties that have the greatest potential to generate revenue for the taxing entities, and those that could most conveniently and profitably be sold first, and not really worry very much about those that might have little or no value, because that'll be a lot of administrative difficulty for them. And again, this is a group of people working without compensation and without staff support. So they're probably going to focus on those things that have the biggest bang for the buck.
let's just take the Bridge District.
Yes.
There's the redevelopment funds that have gone into that. So in essence, the redevelopment agency has some ownership. I mean, this oversight committee can't go into, or I don't think should be able to go into the Bridge District properties and say, well, this is something we can market, so therefore we're going to sell it.
Well, it would have to be formally owned by the redevelopment district or owned
Okay.
by the redevelopment district. We, as you'll recall, we've sold some
Right.
property
Right.
in that category to a third party. But,
But we have some residual.
well, we have some developable parcels too. I mean, you don't have to look real far. You know, Tower Court is owned by the redevelopment agency.
Yeah, but there's some contamination issues there that
Sure.
nobody'd want to buy it.
That's possible. And
Hopefully.
in fact, it might be to our advantage
Exactly.
to sell that
Right.
sooner rather than later. And so, you know, we will certainly, as the successor agency, have some control of what we might present the oversight committee with, but we can't direct them or determine what they will do. But
Okay.
we might come before them. You know, we're the closest thing they have to a staff, and so we might prepare an agenda that says, these are the things that you might want to consider at your next meeting.
Okay, okay.
Okay, so we do have one request to speak on that item, Mr. Bill Lowell, item 8, right? Yes.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, William Lowell, again for the record. And didn't hear too much talk about it, it didn't seem like, but it seemed to me like over the years, the redevelopment agencies have not only been supplying the needed funds for the work they've been doing, but eventually it seems like the state has been making money from what the redevelopment agencies have been doing. And so it sounds like in their dissolving of the redevelopment agencies, they are actually shooting themselves in the foot, so to speak, or in their pocket, and they will be losing money as well as the local governments. So I don't understand that part, but once again, I have to go back almost 50 years, back to 1962, when the State Franchise Tax Board would not allow people like me to audit tax returns prepared by the so-called professional tax preparers. And right after Governor Arnold was elected governor, the outgoing head of franchise tax admitted the state was losing $6.5 billion a year because of that lack of auditing. So if we would just insist that our legislators allow the Franchise Tax Board to hire more auditors and start auditing those tax returns that they haven't been doing for the past several decades, we wouldn't have to raise taxes. We could lower taxes, but all these people that have been getting away with not paying their fair share, they'd have to start paying their fair share. But I guess that's not in the books. But there's that food for thought again. If you want to just maybe that'll affect the recipe for success.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lowell. So we'll bring it back to the council for, and I think staff is looking for some direction on this, right?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I would recommend that the city council, acting as a successor agency to the redevelopment agency, approve the amended EOPS, which includes attachment 1 to the staff report, authorize the city manager as designee to make minor changes, modification, amendment to ESOPs, and authorize the establishment of new funds and cost centers necessary to the dissolution of the redevelopment agency, and to ensure that the city's accounting practices conform to ABX 1, 26, and 4, and adopt resolution 12-7, reaffirming the city as a successor agency.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries unanimously. All right, thank you very much. There's a lot of questions to still be answered. All right,
Yeah,
item.
that one is really sort of open. There's still a lot of information that has to get out.
All right, item 9, status report on the West Sacramento Levee Improvement Program and FEMA remapping.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, members of the City Council. Could you cue up the PowerPoint? It's my pleasure tonight to provide an update on the West Sacramento Levee Improvement Program and FEMA remapping process, and to highlight some successes and current challenges that we have within our program. Tonight, I wanted to highlight 5 major topics, and these are some of the successes and challenges that we have. But could you go to the next slide, please? I want to take a step back and just remind the council and members of the public some of the flood protection program objectives and priorities that we have, because we have a lot of moving parts within the program, and it can get confusing all the priorities that we have moving forward at the same time and how they all interrelate with one another. So let me just kind of run through what our priorities are. Achieve a minimum of 200-year level of flood protection for the entire city. Prioritize and select levee reaches for improvement under the state's early implementation program to reduce risk to life and property as quickly as possible. Secure state and federal funding for levee improvements, and I'm going to talk about that in more detail tonight. Talk about the FEMA remapping process, and our goal to achieve the best possible outcome of eventual FEMA remapping process. We also have other ongoing duties that I wanted to highlight. To review development and floodplain management so that we can ensure that no construction takes place that could potentially degrade or impact our flood protection system. So I wanted to highlight we are going to be updating the floodplain management ordinance that the city has to include a levee protection zone so that our program can look at future potential development within that zone that could potentially impact our flood protection system. And we're going to provide the council a workshop next month or early April. We also have emergency preparedness that we take very seriously. We coordinate with the PD and fire departments. We coordinate with Yolo County Emergency Operations Center, the reclamation districts, and the maintaining agencies from the state and the Army Corps. So we do a flood season preparation meeting every year, and we're very active during the wet season to ensure the protection of our citizens. And lastly, and most importantly, we're attempting to achieve congressional authorization for the West Sacramento Levee Improvement Program. We have a general reevaluation report underway, that's GRR in the parentheses. And that report will lead to a chief's report that goes to Congress to ultimately authorize our levee improvement program. If you can go back to the first slide, please, and then you could just leave it there. Thank you. 2011 was a very successful year for the flood protection program. I want to highlight the levee improvement construction that took place this past year in 2011. We had 4 projects that were completed, totaling approximately $30 million in construction. West Safeco was the lead on 2 of those projects. We had the Rivers and the CHP Academy early implementation projects. We completed those in December of this year. We're currently doing minor punch list walks with our contractors, but essentially all the construction has been completed. We're going to be working on our construction documentation reporting and doing conducting our transfer meetings with the Army Corps and the Central Valley Flood Protection Board. So those projects are wrapped up. The deficiencies that we corrected within those projects were essentially through and under seepage problems. We had geometry issues, we had some erosion issues, and some vegetation issues that we corrected by those projects. Also, the Army Corps completed 2 projects along the Yolo bypass. One was north of Highway 80. That project was completed in late November, early December. And then there was an emergency slip repair south of I-80, actually south of the 2009 repair project. That was a minor project in length. It was only about 500 or 600 feet in length. But the Corps was able to get in there under emergency conditions, complete that project prior to the flood season. So those are successes for the program. We're very excited to get those projects, get money in the ground, get improvements taking place to achieve a better level of flood protection for the city. One of the items I wanted to highlight, the Central Valley Flood Protection Board just recently celebrated their 100-year anniversary last Friday, and at their anniversary, their executive officer was presenting to the crowd the ongoing activities of the board. And behind him, he had signs showing our Rivers and CHP Academy projects, and he highlighted the successes that our program has underway. So it was a major achievement for our program to have that recognition by the state. We're also in design on another early implementation project. Councilman Christoph highlighted that at the beginning of this meeting. It's the Southport Sacramento River early implementation project. It's a approximately 6 mile reach of levee along the Sacramento River in Southport. Deficiencies within that project site include seepage, erosion, geometry, stability issues, and vegetation issues. So we have a whole host of deficiencies within that project reach that we're looking to correct with our project. Our goal is to complete as much of that project, as much of those 6 miles as we can, maximizing both West Safeco and state resources. And the sooner we can commit the state to committing those resources to our project, the better off we are, because there's starting to be more and more agencies competing for a limited pot of dollars. So we're at the front, but we need to stay there to commit those resources. And I have good news about other state monies that I'll talk about. Major components of this program, it's a very complicated project. Major components are the funding mechanisms that we need to take place, maximizing our share and the state cost share. We have a lot of utility relocations that are going to need to take place. We have real estate acquisition process that we're going to need to move forward on. We have transportation issues. We have South River Road that's currently on the levee. We'll be looking to relocate a roadway further to the west, looking at possibly building part of Village Parkway as part of this project. And we have a lot of material that we're going to need to build these levees. So we have borrow material issues. We need to try to maximize the closest borrow sites to the project to reduce project costs. So that's another major component of our project. Where we are on this project, the status, we've presented 2 15% designs to the West Safeco board in January. We're producing cost opinions for those two alternatives that we'll be presenting to the board in March. This month, next week, we'll be presenting cost opinions for what we called combined measure alternatives that were completed prior to the 15% designs. We're going to be presenting those cost opinions to the board next week to further educate the board and the public on the magnitude of cost of these projects, so that ultimately we could select the most cost-effective solution to repair this project. So in March, the board will receive those cost opinions on the 15% designs, and ideally they'll make a selection of a preferred alternative to advance to 60% design. And what could very well happen is we have the 2 alternatives, and the board may select some components of both alternatives and combine them. So we'll present a multitude of options for the board, but I think cost will really drive this selection as we move forward. So that's the timing of the Southport EIP project.
Mike, let me just interject something, because you talked about a lot of the main issues and what they are. Really, the most important issue is going to be the potential relocation of homes, the potential relocation of families, and the turmoil that causes when a project, if it deems to be like this one, affects people in those ways. And I just wanted to make sure that everybody up here understands we're all getting phone calls, we're all having discussions at a store, whatever it may be. And, you know, that's our number one concern, so.
Right, that's a very good point. And what I failed to mention, this council and the West Safeco Board has directed myself and my team to provide as much public outreach as possible throughout this process. So we've conducted, you know, our board meetings, we advertise those meetings. They're now held here in this chamber. We've been following up those meetings with public workshops to present the same material to the public in a better venue for them to see the material and to ask questions of our team. We're also having one-on-one meetings with the public as requested. So we're trying to get the information out there so we can educate those who are mostly impacted by the project and those who just want information about the project. So thank you for that. The next item I wanted to talk about was funding for the program. I have very good news on the design funding agreement that we have with the state. We initiated an amendment to that design funding agreement, and it was just approved. I just received it back from Department of General Services today. It's an increase of $14.3 million for our design activities. So it's a significant commitment by the state to our program. We've gotten great support from the staff all the way up to the director, moving these documents along and getting the approvals in place in a timely manner for us to continue to move forward. So I wanted to highlight that tonight. And we achieved that additional cost from a design perspective because we were able to achieve a 90% cost share for our projects in the north, the I Street, Rivers, and CHP early implementation projects. So that was a significant achievement for a high cost share, and we're able to move those dollars down to the Sacramento, the Southport project. And we significantly increased the size of that project compared to what we initially submitted back in 2009. So that was another reason for the increase. So it totals now, it's a $19.3 million design funding agreement, so it's a substantial amount. In addition to that, the state had committed $87 million in state capital outlay to our program several years ago. We asked them to submit a budget change proposal for an additional $74 million, and that has been approved by the Department of Water Resources. It's now with the Department of Finance for final processing. So that's $161 million of state monies being committed to the West Sacramento Levee Improvement Program. It's significant. From a federal funding perspective, we're working very closely with the district, the Army Corps District, SAC District Office on our general reevaluation report. This is the mechanism, as I previously stated, to provide federal authorization for our project, for the West Sacramento project, with the hopes to achieve upwards to 65% of federal funding for our project. We continue to work hard to receive federal appropriations to advance our study, the GRR, and also to fund the levee improvements such as the YOLO slip repairs that were recently completed. So we're in that mode of federal appropriations on an annual basis, and that's been successful. The general reevaluation report, we're going to achieve our F3 milestone. It's the existing conditions report milestone, part of our process. The GRR was initiated in 2009. It's looking like our schedule is going to take us into early 2015 to complete this study and get a chief's report to Congress. So it's a lengthy process. We're doing everything we can to try to expedite the study and move things along. Unfortunately, we thought we were going to have this F3 conference back in November, and then Corps headquarters came in and had questions about the report, mostly from a regional perspective basis. They wanted to understand how the West Sacramento GRR fits into the entire Central Valley and all the projects that are moving forward at the same time. I think Corps headquarters out in DC they're concerned about one study moving and not taking into account another study. So we're working very closely with district staff to address those comments. The mayor and Bill Panos, our public works director, were recently in Washington, D.C. They had a whole slew of meetings with Corps headquarters and FEMA and our congressional staff. And this was one of the items they talked about with Corps headquarters. And a good result of being out in DC is that the headquarters had called the district right after that saying, hey, we want updates about West Sacramento's GRR. Where are you? How can we move this forward? So that being out there, meeting with them at the headquarters offices, it makes significant changes to our progress. Okay, federal credit. I want to talk about federal credit. This is one of the major challenges we have currently. The early implementation projects, as part of the state agreements, the state requires us to not secure federal credit, but to try to secure federal credit. It's very loose in their language, which is helpful to us because we weren't able to secure that credit for the rivers and CHP, but the state allowed us to move forward into construction. But this is a serious concern for our program and for our Sacramento EIP project, the Southport EIP project. The Assistant Secretary of the Army last year changed the way that the Corps was going to grant credit for projects. Previously, it was a Section 104 in the Water Resources Development Act. That was the section that allowed for credit to be initiated at a feasibility, or actually at a reconnaissance study stage, which we're already at. We've passed that stage. Therefore, we were allowed 104 credit for the I Street project. Unfortunately, the ASA has changed the decision to use 104 to a different section in a different WRDA, which is a more recent Water Resources Development Act, which is WRDA, from 2007. It's Section 221. That section only allows federal credit to be achieved at the chief's report stage of a GRR or a feasibility study. So it's a total change from 104 is at the beginning of that process to 221 is at the end of the process. Substantial change given the magnitude of the time it takes to get these studies through and completed. Some agencies have had a feasibility study ongoing for 20 years in the valley here. So it's a huge concern that we have. Like we've done on all our other projects, we've ramped up and we've made substantial efforts to change that process. We've initiated a national coalition with our state partner, DWR, and other agencies like ours, both in California and nationally. And we've gotten a lot of support from Congress on this effort. And any day now, the Senators Boxer and Feinstein are supposed to meet and sit down with the ASA to talk about this situation, and in particular, the impacts on West Sacramento. And we've provided both of their staffs a lot of information about our situation and ways that we think the ASA could maybe change the 221 regulations to allow for programs like ours to continue to move forward. So I'll keep you posted on that progress. But that's a considerable concern that we have. We're doing everything we can to move that forward. Once again, the mayor and the public works director were in DC. That was one of the major talking points when they were out there. So we think we're doing everything we can to change the ASA's direction on that. So like I said, we'll keep you posted on that.
Mike, can I just ask a question on that?
Sure.
So is that, that change, is it causes uncertainty about the funding available in terms of the federal credit as you move forward? I mean, is that the biggest, I know they changed the process from the 104 to the 221, but.
The timing is the biggest issue.
So the timing, is it because you don't know what kind of credit you're gonna get in order to move forward, or how?
Well, in our instance, we can't, if 221 were to stay the way it's written now and you have to have a chief's report completed, that's another 4 years for us. So that means we couldn't move forward on the Sacramento project. We're dead in the water, essentially. Yeah. 221 also has issues with real estate and easements and acquisitions as part of a project that those may not be qualified like they were under 104. So there's other cost implications also. Okay. The last component is the FEMA remapping. And what I want to highlight before I dive into that is how a lot of these components are interrelated with one another in terms of, like I just talked about, the federal crediting and the early implementation projects and our GRR. They're all tied together. And in order to provide the flood protection to reduce the risk to life and property, we need to advance our program as quickly as possible. In addition to that important component is the FEMA remapping process. So where we are with FEMA is FEMA initiated their remapping process with the city back in 2007, and it really got going in 2008 and 2009, and we had continuous dialogue with FEMA. We've been able to postpone the remapping. We're still Zone X. We still enjoy that FEMA flood zone. That's a success, but the biggest success in my mind is our relationship with FEMA has changed considerably since back in 2007. They understand who we are now. They understand our project, our program. They really look at West Sacramento as a model community, a small agency as we are. We're advancing considerable efforts and monies into our levee improvement program, and we've built such wonderful relationships with the Army Corps and the state agencies to advance our program. They don't want to slow that down. We've showed them that if they come in and remap us, they're going to slow us down and they're going to put more people at risk. So they understand that now. It's taken a lot of years to get to this point, but we're there now, and it's been a huge change in our relationship. We're working with FEMA on changing the regulations that they currently have on how you qualify for certain flood zones like AR, A99. So we're looking to have FEMA rewrite those regulations so that model communities such as ours can qualify for a more favorable flood zone. So we have that going on right now. We also pointed out that FEMA, the way FEMA models, computer models their floodplains was a real problem, because essentially if you can't show your levees or your flood protection system provide a 100-year level of protection, they simply take them out of the model and assume they're not there, and then they model the floodplains that way. So that's a real issue. That was one of the major components that we were driving with FEMA, and they heard us, and they're changing the way that they do their floodplain mapping. So they suspended their national efforts to change, to remap communities. They recently issued a new floodplain modeling criteria that we have under review. We've commented on. I've highlighted a lot of the details in the staff report tonight. I don't want to get into all those details, but I laid out the timeline and the steps that they're taking to move this process forward. And everything we're hearing from FEMA, it's probably going to take them a good part of this year to complete that modeling process, so that they feel they have a much better tool to go back out and start the remapping process. So that's kind of where they're at on the floodplain modeling. Back again to the DC trip, when the mayor and the public works director are out there, they met with FEMA headquarters, and they sat down, and FEMA really understands where we're at in our process. So the mayor and Bill were able to update them on our program, let them know all the monies that we've spent to date, where we're going with our Sacramento Southport project, and the timelines for that. And it's seeming that our process for construction may align with the FEMA remapping process. So we're looking at several years in the future to start sitting down with FEMA and looking at getting a new floodplain map for the city. But we have to continue to move forward and show progress and start really putting money and investing in these levee improvements to achieve a much more favorable flood zone designation. So that's kind of my highlights. In closing, like I said, it's imperative that we move forward. We complete as much of the Southport project as quickly as we can. We build as much of that project as we can afford. And I believe that's going to make us achieve a better flood zone designation at the end of the day. So that's kind of what I wanted to highlight. A lot of successes, some challenges. I hope I was able to kind of pull some of the pieces together and make it understandable about all the moving parts. And I look forward to your questions.
Great. Are there any questions? Mr. Ledesma.
Thank you. Michael, thank you very much for the briefing and overview of where you are. I guess the question on the last 2 points, or your last point on, you're working with FEMA and the relationship we've built and their understanding how we're moving forward. In your previous remarks, you talked about the federal credit and how that regulation, we're looking for a regulatory change that'll allow us to keep moving forward. Is FEMA helping to understand that point that we're trying to make, or are they the agency we're actually, it's the Army Corps that's...
It's the Army Corps.
Right, so is there communication between the two agencies about what one will do and the other, or?
No, I'm not aware of, we're not doing active communications with FEMA on the federal crediting issue. It's more focused with Army Corps headquarters and our congressional representatives on that.
But they understand that I'm just trying to understand how, well, I shouldn't try to understand this, but you have one agency that's basically bought in and they see our value and what we're trying to do, and another ones that sees a regulatory change and could bring it to a screeching halt, as you put it. So, okay. And then the other question I had was, in the last couple of weeks, DWR had come out with their Central Valley blueprint plan, and just kind of your opinion or your thought. I mean, that was a very large $17 billion project they outlined, and how we fit into that, and how our program either benefits or may not.
That's a great question. It's probably one of the things I should have highlighted tonight. We are very active in that process in the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan that DWR has basically completed, and it's out for public review. They just presented it to the Central Valley Flood Protection Board last Friday. I was at that presentation. West Sacramento is part of that plan. We're part of the urban areas, and really the plan calls for prioritizing the urban areas within the Central Valley to get us to the level of 200-year flood protection. So we're part of that plan. We're really prioritized because of our situation as an urban area. You can see from the huge commitments that DWR has made to us from a funding perspective that we're part of that plan. And the only concern that we have, essentially, is when they talk about moving more water into the YOLO bypass.
That was going to be my question.
We want to make sure that the levee improvements that are necessary to handle those additional flood flows and more frequent flows are taken into account, and we'll look to ensure that they are.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Michael.
Yep.
Any other questions? Mr. Hanson.
Yeah, Mike, down in the on the Southport reaches, when we're constructing the levees down there, I've heard some reports of some roads being put in that people are actually getting on those roads and, maybe dumping trash and things like that. Is there anything inconsistent that we're doing in terms of road building there with our Southport, a loop road that eventually is going to come in, or can you maybe just talk about that a bit?
I think you may be referring to the Army Corps' Sac Bank project that's in Southport, the setback levee project. It's under winter suspension. They've barricaded it off essentially to through traffic, except for emergency vehicles and RD 900. I'm not sure if that's the area, but we're keeping a close eye on that. We're communicating with the adjacent property owners, and we're trying to, as a city, we're trying to encourage the Corps to provide more frequent, because it's really their project site right now, to provide better oversight to go out there. And we're also working with our PD, police department, to ensure that there's no off-road vehicles going out there and dumping of trash and things like that. But it's slightly out of our control in terms of it's an Army Corps project, but we're doing everything we can to provide the oversight that we can and provide the communication back to the Corps to get action taken.
Great, thanks.
Nope. All right. Well, thank you, Mike. That's a great update. So it's complicated, and I think you certainly have mastered, well, I don't know about mastered, but you certainly got a good handle on all the different moving parts. I know staff has done a great job of trying to keep our status as a model city in order to continue to make progress on this very complicated and very expensive issue. So thanks for the update. Very helpful. Okay. All right. We don't need a motion, right? We're good? Just information? All right. that brings us to council calendar.
Point out to the council that the strategic planning session is coming up later this month on starting on February 20th through the 22nd. And then not on your calendar in the month of March, as a Saturday, March 10th, at 1:30, we'll be having the ribbon cutting for the Learning Ladder Preschool and Child Care Center, and that'll be followed from 2 to 5 by the first anniversary celebration of the community center being open. So that will be taking place then.
Right, city manager report.
Yes, I think the city council may recall that back in January, there was a breach of security with the city of Sacramento's website. And we happen to share the same software that they do, not the specific example of it, but we have the same company that serves us. So we wanted to investigate that. Basically, they had a hacker that took advantage of a weakness in the server software. There was a patch available to Sacramento. They hadn't installed that, and that patch was intended to prevent this kind of breach. We have installed that patch. We had it installed at that time as well. And so we don't think that we're vulnerable, at least to that particular form of attack, even though we do share the same kind of software. So I wanted to give you that update.
All right, great. Thank you very much. City manager, city attorney report. No report. All right, staff direction from council members. Seeing none. Future agenda item requests. Having none. Looking for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
So moved. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, thank you.